Well, just when we thought it'd just be another Thursday with, no news to report.
Nothing.
The Cardinals went out and got themselves in the news cycle again. So I guess yay for that, although some of the news isn't the best. So we've got some things to talk about. And I am joined, as always, by my good friend here, Aarron Van Buren. Aarron, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great. Just ready to actually talk about something that is new. And of course, it happened hours before we got live. So let's go.
Yeah. So there's a couple things to talk about. One is more of a substantive story, meaning something actually happened, and the other is still the bigger story, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about. I've got the two tweets. We've got the one from Tom Pelissero. The Cardinals have yet to make a contract offer to Pro Bowl quarterback Kyler Murray, whose agent Eric Burkhart informed the team weeks ago he was pulling his opening proposal off the table per sources. Other teams are monitoring closely. Arizona insists Murray won't be traded. Another tweet, he said he doesn't expect Murray to play without a contract extension this year. And the other news, which is the substantive news, but still the smaller story, oddly enough, is that AJ Green re-signed with the Cardinals on a one-year deal worth with $3 million guaranteed up to max of $6 million per. So these are the two items that we're gonna talk about today. So we'll get to both of them, talk about their implications, kind of our takes on them, and answer your questions in the chat and respond to your comments. As always, the folks in the chat are always a big part of what we do here on TCR Live. So, and we appreciate you. Real quick, let me say to a couple of folks that are here. We got Nick, welcome back, Green. So welcome back, AJ Green. Simon saying hi to the chat. And I know we got more folks filing in. So why don't we start with the news about Green? I know that that's not the bigger story, and I will probably spend a lot more time talking about the Kyler news.
Yeah.
So, Aarron, what's your initial thoughts on the Cardinals bringing back Green for 1 year, $3 million guaranteed, up to $6 million, depending on how it performs?
Well, the first thought that came into my mind, at least in terms of like the one non-emotional thought that came in is just like they're bringing back as many people as they can to try to recreate the start of what they had. I mean, when everything was working, 7-0 and literally being talked about as a Super Bowl favorite, that's a rare, we were in rare air, and that's what they're trying to do. On the other hand, the emotional side of me was not very happy, just because, yes, he put up the stats, and he was like 840 yards and 5 touchdowns or something like that. But it was just the quality of the play down the stretch didn't do well to, cover the wound that was that Packers game. And I've been on record as saying it before. AJ Green not turning around is this decade's version of early Doucette tripping in wide open against Cincinnati. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. So, Pedro here says that he thinks bringing back Green is a solid move. Even if they do draft a wide receiver in the first round, learning from him and Hopkins would be a benefit to any rookie.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And, I like that you mentioned, the callback to what the offense looked like, early in the season, because, those first 7 games, and I know things fell apart and they need to figure out how to not have them fall apart. But before DeAndre Hopkins got injured, when your offense was Hopkins, Green, Kirk, Moore, and Max Williams, that offense was nearly unstoppable.
Right. And then now you have Ertz in that first half now too.
Right. So now, Kirk has moved on, right?
Yes.
But Moore, if Moore can step in, and he has in my mind, he just needs to stay healthy. I think he has the skill set to take what Kirk did and be effective in that role. So if Rondale Moore steps in the role Kirk had, and maybe they draft someone to be, that second guy in terms of the slot, Greg Dortch maybe steps into that role, who, will look good at stretches. But they did lose Kirk. We'll say that for the depth chart. But they added Ertz, who was not there during that first stretch, right? So right. This receiving core, in my opinion, is no worse, if not even a little bit better than they were starting last season, if you look at it. Because basically, when you look at how the season started, we've traded Kirk for Ertz. And, and aside from that, it's kind of the same receiving core. So I think it's solid. And, one thing about the Cardinals historically, especially under Steve Keim, and, I get that there's a lot of criticism of Keim, and some of it's deserved, some of it maybe is inflated. But, I've been watching this team for a long time, as you have. And Keim says this every year, that his philosophy is going into the draft, he wants to have players who are capable starters across the board, not necessarily guys that are ideal starters. But he doesn't want to go into the draft where he has to pick a position to be a starter. Now, I know there's problematic aspects of that he hasn't been starting some guys that he should. But the whole point of that is he wants to go in the draft not having to pick for need, but rather to be able to pick the best player on the board at the time. And his argument is, your needs today are not your needs 5 months from now. Things change. So if you're drafting for need now and reaching, you put yourself in a bad position. So whether you agree with that, and you may argue he hasn't been successful, and that's a fair criticism, but what the signing of Green does is puts the Cardinals in a situation where it is not an absolute must that they draft a starting outside wide receiver for that spot. They can start Green. If a receiver is there at 23 who slides to them, they can take him. If taking a receiver at 23 would mean they'd have to reach for someone, they can go a different position because it's not a desperate, we need that guy, situation. So I think I'm not surprised they re-signed him. I think it's in keeping with what Keim tries to do. He tries to make sure he has serviceable starters so that he can go into the draft looking for best position available, or best player available. Yeah. So thoughts on that in terms of what it means for the draft?
Well, I think that, still drafting a wide receiver probably within the first 3 rounds would still be a good idea. I mean, if the Cardinals could, get an impactful defensive lineman or a good corner in the first round, that'd be great. But in second or third, like if you got a Christian Watson that slides all the way deep into the second round, then I would take him. Mm-hmm. I've always been kind of a person who is more free agent centric. If I were to build a team in the draft, I'm always going to go for need. That's just how I would operate. Cause I get your point of, our needs of today won't be the needs down the road, but also if we draft the best player available and it's somebody who we already have a wealth of depth at, like Zaven Collins, mm-hmm. then you're just making more people, like 3 people trying to go through one door. It's going to make it harder for you to evaluate who do we really want out there. And then you didn't address any need because you drafted something that you already have. So, I mean, and I guess some teams, if you're winning and going deeper in the playoffs, you can afford to do the best player available because you have a good foundation. The Cardinals, they kind of do, but we don't at the same time. So that's why the holes need to be plugged in. And receiver, whoever's going to be the number 2 wide receiver, I guess it's Green now, but having somebody else to, we're 3, 4 wide receiver sets to be an actual threat and diversify this offense is still needed. So definitely somewhere within the first 3 rounds, they got to take a wide receiver.
I think they should take a wide receiver too. And let's just, let me be clear. When we say best player available, the kind of the not so secret is teams often stack their draft boards based on need in some regard or other.
Right.
So even best player available is best player at a position that you at least have some need. Like, if the best player on the board is a quarterback, and I know that's right now quite a topic, but assuming they work things out with Kyler, they're not taking a quarterback, right? Or
right.
Or much to the chagrin of JP, one of the folks in Discord and who's a channel member, I don't think they're taking a center if that's the best player available. So there's definitely best player available is a little nuanced in that it's best player within a range of needs, if that makes sense. But
I guess so.
But I think what this does do is that means they don't have to reach for a receiver round one. They can go someone later. I want to get to some of the comments. I think there's some interesting comments about Green. So, if we play Green, his salary isn't exactly prohibitive with regard to promoting competition.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, and so I love that it's not a huge big dollar signing. They've got room to do some other things. Easy No Steroids likes the signing. If we draft someone like Burks, he can play in the slot with the occasional snaps on the outside to spell Green. Listen, Burks was a slot, played slot a lot in college, right? So if they went with someone like him, he's got the build to be the outside. Maybe if Burks is there, they go Burks and they let him kind of get his feet wet in the slot, but try to eventually work him into being that outside receiver next year.
I'd love for him to be the deep threat that Kirk never was. I mean, Burks just has a certain stride to him that is just perfect, and I would jump out of my seat if they draft him.
Yeah. And then I agree with, and I think Ethan here has a point. Bring AJ Green back was pretty solid. If you exclude that one play against Cheeseheads, he's done good around a solid number 2. And there was maybe another play that was a little off, but I think people forget that there were some really big plays he made down the field, 50-50 balls that extended drives. And I know I've said this before, but overall he was good. Most players have one or two bad plays. His came at the worst moment. Right. But for what we're paying for him, he was a solid number 2.
Yeah.
So, he's Easy No Steroids saying the same thing. Let's not forget there's no Green Bay play without AJ Green making clutch catches down the stretch, right, to get us to that point. Lance saying that's one, if not the weakest positions for us, even though we've drafted many in the past few years. I feel like Keim has stunk at drafting wide receivers, even though that now is Kyler and Cliff quarterbacks. Okay.
All the Chad Williams of the world and Ryan Swope back in the day, if you remember that.
Now that was an injury situation, right?
Right.
So but it's hard to know. Yeah. Mr. Mono's saying my criticism of Green is that he plays smaller than 6'4" frame. He tends to body catch instead of catching the ball in the air. He lost some one-on-ones last year because of his alligator arms. I mean, I guess you could at the same time, sometimes he plays big in terms of going up for those 50-50 balls. There were a couple plays where he looked like a man amongst children, so amongst boys going up for the ball. But
go ahead.
I was just saying, but maybe there's some plays where he does body catch, but those 50-50 balls, he goes up for those sometimes. So
the other thing I was going to say of that, because a pass and a catch is always a two-way street, and so how many of those body catches were bad throws from Kyler, or is Kyler 15 yards behind the line and thrown off his back foot like he always seems to do? And scrambling on the run is going to change how you throw a ball as if you're standing still, or at least in the pocket. So I don't know. Yeah. Go back and watch the film, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, listen, AJ Green isn't the receiver he used to be. He's not a number 1, but what he is a solid veteran who can get some of those 50-50 balls. He makes some nice plays. He's a solid player who allows us to not have to reach for a receiver if we can get a good receiver in there. He's also not so expensive, and he's also not a long-term deal. So we can get another receiver in. We're not overly committed to him. So I like it. It puts us in a better situation. And then let's see, I want to just say hey to a couple other folks. Alon's here. Sorry, I'm late. So stoked to be listening. We really appreciate you. We've got underscore both the O-line, D-line. We lack an interior help production. Yeah. Unless a player drops, I say we go interior of either those lines of the ball. Yeah, I lean in those in terms of the first round. unless, a receiver that we don't expect to be there drops, or even a cornerback who's like one of the top ones that we don't think will be there drops. And, I'm not foregoing cornerback early this year, but if one of the really good ones drops, you have to consider it. But aside from players dropping to us that we don't expect to be there, I'm all for go someone like Zion Johnson, guard, or go, Devontae Wyatt, at tackle. I think helping those parts of the ball are the offense or defense makes sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, how I feel about offensive linemen. But first round, if we could get a guard, it would be great. I know someone in the Discord was like, oh, I would like barf emoji if they draft a guard. But in reality, we had trouble with the guards last year. So, I mean, everybody has their own opinion and they're welcome to it. I just think that with no offensive line, nobody goes anywhere. And so, yeah, I would be fine with either side of the trenches because our run defense was just as atrocious as the guards were, and the defensive tackles were nowhere to be seen. I just remember being embarrassed in that Vikings game watching Dalvin Cook just go run at will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I want to say hey to Grandizer, great supporter of the channel, and he's a great supporter of YouTubers in general. I pop into like Payo Times live streams, and Grandizer's there being a great support there as well. We're doing well. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for reminding folks to hit the like button. Sincerely appreciate you. Let's see. Let me just hit on a couple other folks
he
here.
Also knows good Big Sky quarterbacks.
Oh,
Eric Berry, your fan club. Let's go.
Nice. Dakota Bedard's here. Trade up for Derek Singley. Also trade up for extra. Well, if you trade up to get extra picks, then what you're doing is you're getting very, very late picks. Is part of the trade. I'm not a fan of trading up if you aren't going for a franchise quarterback in the first round. That's my opinion. I can live with trading up a few spots to get a guy if you're giving up not too much, but I'm personally not for that. I get that's just a matter of opinion. Let's see. L1 saying we got to show Kyler we're serious. Trade up, get a top receiver in this class, please. I appreciate the sentiment. We do need to build around him. I'm just, again, not a fan of that. That's my personal opinion, but
with that, he's got DeAndre Hopkins, he's got Zach Ertz, he's got AJ Green, and he's got JJ Watt on the other side of the ball. What else do you need to show him that he cares other than the contract, which is an entirely different conversation?
Yeah.
You have all the toys so many Cardinals quarterbacks would have died for. And you gotta produce. And once you get your contract, if it happens, you got to produce.
And I would even take it in a less or I would take it in a little bit different direction, but the same ethos is, there are ways you can help him without having to trade up to get a weapon. Get him a guard like Zion Johnson, if that's what you want to do. Get him an elite offensive lineman to protect him, right? And it's just as important as getting him some weapons. And I think you can do that without trading up, and giving up draft picks that could be used to fill other needs. So that's kind of my take. But I mean, listen, I love Kyler and I want to support him with what he needs on the roster. Jordan P's here. Thanks for being here, Jordan. He's the biggest Kyler fan, but a lot of his passes to AJ Green were off target. AJ would have had over 1,000 yards if Kyler better chemistry, good signing. He was productive. True. And, maybe the second year in the system, we'll see that kind of improvement. So I think it's a good signing too. We'll see how it goes. Let me also, real quick. Yeah.
To add to that, if Kyler doesn't miss 3 games, he goes over 1,000 yards.
That's a distinct possibility too, right? Yeah. Rafael Castillo's here. Appreciate you being here. Great support of the channel. Really active in the Discord. We got World Peace, who's been a long time supporter of the channel, one of the OGs. What's up, Prof? Been a minute. Cards news in this offseason while the Rams are back all in. Going to be a tough. My guy needs to make some moves ASAP. Boy, that's been quite the conversation all off season. So yeah. Real quick, let's see. Aaron Van Buren, thanks. Just curious. Dude, it seems most of Joseph's guests do not live in AZ. Cardinals have more content creators as opposed to those in Arizona. Yeah, I don't know. I often call us the Cardinals diaspora. And I don't know if it's that I just gravitate the kindred spirit with other Cardinals fans who like myself, don't live in Arizona. It's probably just, but I've had like Mike on here before, AZ Sports Fan, and other folks who are from AZ. So, but I think I've just kind of connected with you all a bit.
And the other thing is to think about too is that the Cardinals, I mean, they've moved almost as many times as the Rams have, and so they have roots across the country, and then there's just little smatterings of us here and there. So of course I'm from Wisconsin, so I defected at the age of 11 and chose this for life. So it's been an interesting ride, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah,
for sure. We got Aiden here. Thanks for being here. The offseason is such a roller coaster. I love and hate it. Right. It's definitely an experience. So yeah, I mean, I know people were down on AJ Green. I think most people view it as a reasonable re-signing. Maybe they wouldn't have felt that way a while back, but and maybe the reason people feel that way is because there's been so little activity, that they're glad to
I'm just glad the contract isn't crazy. Like, I'm fine with this.
Yeah. No, I agree. And listen, I know people don't like this, but I think and I've said this before, whether you like it or not, the Cardinals' plan has been go for signings like this, re-sign their own, get guy, and then bring in players who were not big contracts, who were not going to impact the compensatory picks. They're going to draft. And after the draft, they're going to try to add some players, the time signings, and improve the roster. Now, I get that some people don't like that. We've hashed it out before. Whether you like it or not, I think that's the plan. And if you look at it, I think this roster, if they go through this and they add a few players like that, it could actually still be a better roster than it was starting last year if you look at it. Because, the edge rusher situation is the biggest concern question mark. But they might sign someone like an Ingram or another veteran who's a solid pass rusher. Chandler Jones, for as good as he is, he didn't go. He didn't give us he gave us 10.5 sacks last year, 5 of them in one game, right? So it depends on who they sign after the draft, and we'll have to wait and see, right? And like Jordan P saying, can we please get Gilmore? He would fill a huge need. Anyone they sign who is going to get a good sized contract is going to lose a compensatory pick for them. I know some people don't think that's as important. I get that. But whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, I think that part of their strategy is they want to hold on to those comp picks. If Gilmore is still available after the draft, then they may be in on him. I have a feeling he'll be signed before then. But they're just, in my opinion, they're not bringing in another big name on any sizable contract until after the draft. Mm-hmm. So again, I get it if you don't like that strategy, and but whether you like it or not, I think that's what their strategy is. So Underscore has a question related to Kyler Murray. And I think that's going to be a good way to transition to the conversation about Kyler Murray. With the lack of off-season free agent signings, does this mean we aren't looked at as a contender, a destination, even with K1? What are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of posed this question to, TCR before we came on the air. And it's just like, what if, the limbo or the gray space that we're in with, Murray's going to get this, he's not going to get this. That's what I was thinking of why like free agents haven't come here, just because they don't know what they're going to get. And if they don't have anything set in stone, then like, why bother? I mean, a lot of the free agents out there are experienced veterans who may be looking for their final big contract, and they want to get as much as they can before their time is done. And because of what's going to go on with Murray, which, whether it happens or not, or 5th-year extension, whatever it may be, it could be a barrier to entry for some of these players who probably would have came. Like we had JJ Watt last year. Nothing these talks were going on. So I don't think people don't see us as a contender. I just don't know if the Cardinals did any favors to themselves in the season to kind of recruit more people, because they took a risk on James Conner, paid off immensely. They took a risk on AJ Green, and we just debated that. And even JJ Watt, and it got him off to a great start, but where's the depth? And maybe other free agents want to come in and be the star. But the problem is there's a lot of stars here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the people underneath them just aren't as good as they need to be, or playing up to where they need to be. So it's a very complex answer to dig at.
So my answer to this is I don't think, I mean, the lack of free agent signings, I don't think players look at that look at that and say, oh, I don't want to go to Arizona, they're not a contender. I think players look at the roster, and honestly, I think fans have a little bit knee jerk in our reaction to this, because we want an exciting offseason, and we've been, fans have been disappointed by the lack of activity. But like, they brought back some key guys, they signed some guys to fill some holes, and if you look at the roster, it's still a really good roster. You have a quarterback who is exciting and can play as a top 5 quarterback when he's healthy. You have DeAndre Hopkins. You have some really good pieces. And I think players across the league don't look at it the same way fans do. I think players have a better idea than you or I do about what's a good team and what's not a good team. And I think they look at this team and say, this is a team that has some really good players on it, and made we all know how it fell apart, but I think they look at a team, and if you've got a quarterback you're confident in, I think that's a team, like there, it was in the news, and you may have seen this, that the Jets had trouble. They struck out on a lot of free agents they were trying to sign because players weren't wanting to go there because they weren't confident about what they have with Zach Wilson, right? That's a real situation where the quarterback and everything going on with that team really did keep people from wanting to go there. I don't think that's going on here. I think people around the league, players, look at the Cardinals and say, that's a team that has enough talent and they have a quarterback. You can win with that team. I don't think that the fact that they didn't do a big splash has impacted that, because there's other teams that didn't make big splashes. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it's impacted that. But the Kyler Murray stuff is absolutely a question and concern. So, man, where do we begin, right? with the Kyler Murray stuff. So, what do you make of the fact that, or at least the report that Burkhardt took the offer off the table?
That was news to me, as I probably think everybody. And it's just like, if you were going to pull your vigorous demands and all the effort you went through to make that ransom appearing letter and stating, like, the fans want this and we want the money because Kyler wants to win a Super Bowl and he wants to be here, and then just be like, oh no, we're actually going to take that back. It's just like, then what did you even do it for? It's, to quote Ricky Bobby, I'm a little confused by your tactics. The other thing is, and I had seen this on Twitter from someone else, is like the timing of it. I don't know if this is like Burkhardt's MO, or if it's Murray, or if they're combined, or who is running this whole thing. But think of every significant thing that's happened this offseason, like with Murray. We had something come up literally like days before the combine started, if not the day of the first combine day. I think we had something else come up in just before free agency started, and now we're at the draft, or almost 2 weeks from the draft from today, and then this came up. It's just I guess it just comes down to, are you trying to call the Cardinals bluff? Because if you are, I don't really think with this latest move that you're doing the job that you wanted to do. If you're an agent, your job is to be successful and get your clients to have these, contracts and have them be successful. But now, since you took that extension off the table, you've basically admitted like, yeah, well, we're not really invested anymore. We got cold feet at the altar when we really thought about it. So, um, I mean, and then there's a bunch of other stuff I could say about the numbers and the extensions of 5th years, but I'll leave it at that and let you get a word in.
Okay. So I have two thoughts, and two key thoughts about this, and I tweeted out about this. One, I do think in general, Burkhardt is trying to keep Kyler's contract in the news cycle, and he's dropping things at one at certain intervals to try to keep it in the news because he's trying to keep pressure on the Cardinals to do something. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I agree with how he's doing it, but I think that's what he is doing. And I think this is the latest thing to try to keep it in the news cycle because we're all talking about it right now. The national media is talking about it right now. And whether, that puts pressure on the organization when that's happening. So I think part of it is that this was just another news drop to say that. As far as the particulars of the contract allegedly be off the table, to me, that sounds like the price has gone up with the contracts that have been signed, right? Because this offer was made before, or the proposal they put forward was before Derek Carr's contract and before some of the others, and I think before this, I think Stafford got his extension. So I think the price has gone up. Is the reason that I don't think the offer's off the table because Kyler's unwilling to re-sign or extend with the Cardinals. I think it's off the table because what they're saying is that proposal we made weeks ago, that the price has gone up, so we're not willing to accept what we offered, what we proposed however many weeks ago.
And then there's some, there's big discussion even before this really came out. I think like probably 48 hours ago, they're like, because when Derek Carr got the extension, there was like Jess Root and somebody else on Twitter talking about like, the Cardinals just really played themselves by not doing it when they could have done it and extending him, because now, I mean, I don't know, are the numbers for Derek Carr like 40 a year or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, it was about 40 million a year. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like Derek Carr hasn't won a playoff game yet. And he's been in the league, 2013, 14?
Something like that, yeah.
And so, and this is where I'm going to get into kind of like what I had talked about pre-show, is a year ago when Dak Prescott got his extension, I wrote in an article for Raising Zona, the Cardinals should not give Kyler Murray an extension. At the time, Prescott hadn't, really taken off, but, he's shown that he's been worth it. Now, did Dallas really do well off the playoffs? No, but I want the crowd to hang with me on this one, okay? Derek Carr and Dak Prescott and then Kyler Murray, if I'm correct, all this year lost playoff games and haven't. I mean, maybe Prescott won one playoff game down the road against the Seahawks, but it's not there. So why give, a big quarterback contract with a lot of guaranteed money, presumably, to these guys who show that, yes, they can get you there, but they can't get you over the hump. And that's why I wrote in that article, the Cardinals should just bite the bullet of giving Kyler a 5th-year extension, which fully guarantees 2022 and 2023. The number for this year would be $28.5 million, right about, and whatever happens in 2023, I would take that. If that means I'm paying him $42 million and he over delivers, great. Because who wins it? Organization. And if he gets you a title, then great. Then he'll get his contract as well as, as a part of it. So I don't know why that's just not really the decision to go ahead and do it. And then the final thing is we want to look at how much of the cap that Murray is going to take up. Because I assume DeAndre Hopkins' contract is still probably up there in terms of being biggest on the team, along with maybe JJ Watt. And so the only team to make the Super Bowl where two players had over 20% of the salary cap owned by themselves were Steve Young and Jerry Rice in 94 with the 49ers. And so, of course, that was from a year ago, so maybe that changed, but I just don't see how pooling all your money into one basket where that basket can't get you to the place you want to go to as a functional franchise idea. And I know Kyler's been arguably the best quarterback the team has ever had. You can argue with that, or Warner or Palmer, whatever, but there's got to be something, and it probably lies in the coaching aspect, and I'll wrap this up here soon. There's got to be something that hasn't been done that you need to figure out and try to see if it's really the guy, because otherwise you're going to end up going through a 5th-year contract, or basically you can end up with a Baker Mayfield situation. And I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to trade for someone like Deshaun Watson or anything like that, but I can kind of see the parallels between them.
Yeah. Before I get into that, and I've got some responses for both of your core premises there. I just want to say hey to some of the folks in the chat. Pedro, thanks for being here. You've had a couple of comments. Do you take Jameson Williams? Is available at 23? Yeah, if he slides to 23, I'm taking him, even with AJ Green. So with if one of the really good wide receivers slides, I'm still willing to take him, right? But you don't have to reach for one. We got Teddy Jennings in. Thanks. They're going to draft Purdy, maybe. Let's see. I want to make sure I hit everyone who's in here at least once in the comments. If I miss you, I apologize. We got Simon who's here. Thanks for being here. Put up a mock contract Discord. I actually looked at it, and that it seemed reasonable. I'd have to look a little closer at some of the details, but that's close to what I kind of estimated. But I have to wonder if the price hasn't gone up since then. Classy Nasty with the side eyes. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. And I think that's everyone. So let me respond. There were two main contentions that I heard in your comments that I'm going to respond to. The first is, why not just wait it out, do the 5th-year, option, and just hold, dig your heels in. And then the other is that the question about, the point about, percent of cap, over 20% of the cap and not winning a Super Bowl. So when it comes to why not wait out the 5th-year option situation, why not just kind of dig your heels and say, you know what, we're not going to extend you. We have the rights to you. And they can do that, but this is an era where players have more power. And, you may or may not agree with that. I'm for it because I think the labor negotiations have favored the owners so much.
Yep.
And Kyler can say, I'm not going to play for that. I demand a trade. And some people will say, we'll trade him. Okay, you trade him, and then you draft another rookie quarterback, and it's about a 33% hit rate on quarterbacks, and you got to hope the guy you draft is not going to be a miss. And you got to start again with a rookie, and you're still going to have to pay that guy down the road, right?
Right.
Kyler, in my opinion, has shown enough that he's a guy you can win with. I know not everyone agrees with that. I think he is, so I'm all for it. I've been for a long time on team pay Kyler and extend him. So you could try to do that, but in today's NFL, it doesn't work that way. If the quarterback has any leverage, if they've shown that they're good enough, they've leveraged, they will hold out. It will become a staring match, and they'll eventually get traded. That's usually what's going to happen if it does. So your options really are extend him or trade him. Those are your options, right? You waiting it out doesn't. You might be able to get one more year. You might be able to get him to play this year without an extension. But, and we talked about this again before the show, the Baker Mayfield situation, they're friends, right? And Mike Florio was talking about this on a video he posted, and they probably have talked about this. And if you look at Baker Mayfield's situation, part of the reason he didn't get a contract extension, but he got injured, and that's part of the reason he struggled. I know I'm not a huge Mayfield fan, but part of the reason he's not the starting quarterback for the Browns now is he got injured, tried to play through it, and struggled. And I think what he's thinking now, and he's said that he's come out and said this, that, like more or less, like if he had pushed for a contract extension, got a contract extension, they might not have traded for Watson and he'd be the starter. I think Kyler is looking at this and saying, you know what? I don't want to be in that situation. I want to get an extension now so I have the security that if I get injured, they're not going to move on from me later, right? So I know some people won't agree with that, but I think that is part of his mindset. So I just think that waiting it out situation just isn't going to work. I think it's going to end up with a holdout and a trade. So that's why I think you can't do that. In terms of the percent, did you want to respond? Sorry, yeah. Do you want to? Yeah.
I'm just say that last part again about the waiting, so I can just.
The whole thing, I think this tactic of we're not going to extend you. We're gonna dig our heels in. It doesn't work that way. He's going to hold out. You're going to end up having to trade him if you try taking that approach.
Right. Okay. I can see that. And you are right. The 5th years, it doesn't really, yes, that's definitely a thing too. The 5th years or whatever, just waiting out, it doesn't really happen. And, teams, trades are more prevalent now than I can ever remember. I mean, growing up, you would never see a trade in the NFL, but now they're getting more and more common. I just think that, yes, the cap up, and yes, the Rams continuously show us that the cap does not exist. But also you have a general manager who's great at trading. And so, I mean, I wish I had an analogy of something in the past, but I don't off the top of my head. But I mean, what would happen if they do that, staring match, as you said, and then they go for a trade? And what if the quarterback that replaces Kyler perhaps does better than Kyler? Because here's the thing. If Kyler wants a big contract from the Cardinals, it doesn't matter if he gets it from the Cardinals. Wherever he's going to go, someone's going to break the bank for him. The dude's a first overall pick. And so the team was trading for him is going to have to know that. Now, he's not going to get Deshaun Watson money because that was Cleveland desperation all over that. But he is going to get a lot of money. And I just, if it's Kyler Murray, you got to look at where you think you're going to be most successful. And, we have to see if that truly is Arizona with 2022 coming up.
Yeah. And Lance asking, what do we guarantee? Kyler said we pay, but he gets hurt and done for the season. And listen, that's going to that could happen. You have, for me, you kind of have to take the long view of it. There's always, with any quarterback, there's risk. I get some would argue there's more with Kyler with his mobility, but you have to take that risk. You get your franchise quarterback, you sign him, and you hope he doesn't get injured. If he does, it's probably a lost year for that year, and you have to go on to the next year unless you go on some kind of run like the Eagles did with their backup. But so, I think you have to pay him or move on from him. That's kind of your option. And
that's what they said in his letter, is basically like, love me or die.
I mean, and that is your option. And I know, like underscore saying he's not paying him $50 million. I am, if that's what it takes. I think it's going to take a little less than that. But and I'll get to your other point about the percent that, like, if you don't pay him, you have to trade him and you have to start over with a 30% chance that you got a guy who works, and a 66.6% or 33.3, a 1/3 chance that you get a guy who is good, and a 2/3 chance that you draft a guy who you have to spend 2 to 3 years finding out isn't the guy, and then draft another guy. Right. So to me, I'm not doing that. We got a guy. I believe in Kyler. Now, the question you raised about the percent of the cap, that makes sense if you look at it in a cross-sectional way, meaning 1 year. But I think what's lost in that point, okay, is that the cap goes up every year and this quarterback market escalates every year. And I did the video in early March about Kyler's contract, and I showed this. I used graphs, and I think you probably saw that. And for example, if you look at Matthew Stafford's contract before the extension, the one that was paying him $27 million, right, last year, when he signed it, it was actually comparable to about a $46-47 million contract in 2022 quarterback market. So when When Matthew Stafford signed his contract, it probably was somewhere in that 20% of the salary cap. But every year it becomes less. So, yeah, the first year of that contract, it might be that 20%, but 3 years in, it's going to be much lower. So, to me, when you look at it from a longitudinal, not a cross-sectional, yeah, maybe that first year you're in that position with a 20%, but 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, it's a bargain, right? So
Right.
that's my take on that.
And that's a fair point, and I didn't think about it that way. And so, I appreciate you doing that. The other thing is, though, like, both sides are running out of time here. The deadline for the 5th-year option is it's May 2nd, which is, if I'm, quick look at the calendar here, what almost that.
Is it this year? Do they have to do that this year or next year?
Yes.
Okay.
It has to do it this year.
I mean, they're gonna accept that. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion, right? That they will take that.
So that is just over 2 weeks away. I mean, that's literally right after the draft ends. And so, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the discussion here, who's going to budge, but we are now in, I guess I would say, the 11th hour, and we could see some crazy, stuff that surfaces or things that are allegedly said. And I mean, buckle your seats, folks, because it's going to get crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And, Classy Nasty is saying maybe extend Kyler 1 year. He's not signing that.
I wouldn't do that. No.
Yeah. Anyone who thinks that that's what we should sign, I would invite you to watch the video I did back in the beginning of May, where I talked about how the Kyler thing, that Kyler Murray's going to get paid. And I talk about how the quarterback market works. I do some number crunching. I put a lot of time into figuring that out. And I'm just telling you, like, the market for a quarterback right now, and I might have even gone a little low based, in that, but it's 40 to 50 million roughly. Yeah. I think I put it at 42 to 48 million is the market rate that I calculated based on some number crunching. Derek Carr got a $40 million contract, and he's kind of on the low end of your franchise quarterback, kind of situation. And he probably took a little bit of a discount because he wanted to stay there. They got him Devontae Adams, who he wanted to play with.
Oh yeah.
And that's the basement of quarterback contracts now, unless you're a bridge quarterback. Yeah.
That's just reminded me, though, like how, and like I said, I haven't gone and done the nitty-gritty number work, but what does Hopkins, affect, or how does Hopkins' contract affect Murray's? Because you always can't throw the biggest contracts at everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you asking how does the fact that they've paid so much to DeAndre Hopkins impact the negotiations?
Right, because they signed him to a 2-year extension, right? When we got him, and a lot of that was guaranteed out of the 50 mil that he got, I'm pretty sure. So, and I'm bad on, if he's going to be a free agent after this year, but then you're going to have to figure out between Hopkins and then Watt's deal was only 2 years. And, after this year, he's on the market again. So there's a lot going on here.
I don't think it impacts it at all, honestly. I think the way the quarterback market works is there's a going rate, and you pay the quarterback somewhere in that range, what they're willing to accept within that, or you don't. And, I know folks are saying, have to bring up when he asked not to go back in the game against the Rams. People have talked about he hasn't won a playoff game. I don't think we should pay. And, not to be flippant, but I said this in my video, none of that matters when it comes to quarterback contracts. It's like, in terms of what you pay a quarterback, maybe it matters a little bit in the difference between 45 million and 47 million, but it doesn't bring you down to like 35 million because he had whatever. There is this range each year, and if you're either going to sign someone in that range or you're not, right? Or you're going to let him go. If you want to sign him, you've got to pay somewhere in that range. It's just how the market works. The only exceptions to that there are some players like, bridge quarterbacks, who don't, like Trubisky didn't get a massive deal, but he's a bridge quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo, when he signed his contract, he was under market, but he had only started 7 games as a starter, right? So like there's a few exceptions to that, but a guy like Kyler, who you drafted first overall, has been your starter, has missed 3 games over 3 seasons, right? He missed 3 games. He didn't start one the year before, but he came in. So you can, even if you want to say missed 4 games, he missed some games, but it's also not like he missed a whole season, right? The amount of games he missed was not an inordinate number. So when you draft a guy first overall, he is your starter. He's rookie of the year. He has shown the kind of high-end traits that Kyler has shown, even if he hasn't won a playoff game. Even if you got all these, he's going to get paid in that range. You're not going to get a discount contract on him. If you're not willing to do that, you're going to have to move on from him. You may not like it. You may not think he's worth it, but that's how the market works. It's how it works, so like it or not. Real quick, got a comment and I'll let you jump in. Trade Kyler, who's going to run the offense, Colt McCoy, right? And yeah, I mean,
hey, there were a big collection of Cardinals fans who were begging for him to be put in that playoff game, and I was one of them. I mean, it would not be ideal, and I'm not saying I want Colt McCoy to run it, but God forbid if some of the craziest, the stars and galaxies aligned and he was the starting quarterback, I guess I would be somewhat okay.
Yeah. And I think Jose's got, pay him what he's worth. If you want to see fit down the road and trade him, go ahead. He deserves his pay. And, and again, Teddy's saying, that he thinks because, 49ers didn't cave Debo, Cards. I don't think that's,
that's an entirely different situation.
Yeah. It's a receiver. I mean, I just don't see it that way. The Cardinals might drag their heels and they might get through this next year, but then they're going to have to pay him more. That contract next year might be $55 million a year.
And they're playing a dangerous game right now.
Right. So, and listen, so this is, if your position is you think the Cardinals should pay him $35 million or you think they should offer him a 1-year deal, I'm just telling you that's not going to work. It may not seem fair. You may not think he deserves it. It's just not how it's going to work. The Cardinals are going to have to pay him or move on. Yeah, good.
Plus, with the Debo thing is, I mean, I hate to say it, but like Debo's performance, relative to his position and giving his quarterback in what the NFC West used to be, now it's a lot weaker this year, is I would say it's more impressive than what Kyler has done. Of course, trying to compare to a receiver and a quarterback is like apples to oranges, but Debo was just amazingly effective through all years. He was gritty even when he was beaten down in Green Bay and playing hurt. And that was the other thing too. I go back to the end of the 2020 season.
Did you say Debo? Like, I think you're talking about Debo Samuel, right?
Yeah, Debo Samuel. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to compare these two situations in terms to.
I heard you say Green Bay, but you meant a game against Green Bay, right?
Yes, that's my bad.
That's my bad.
But yeah, and so what I'm really saying is just like Debo's team basically rode his effort to the NFC Championship. I mean, we saw what happens when taken out of a game by a defense and. Jimmy Garoppolo had to make plays and they couldn't. And also the Rams defense is just that damn good. But I just think that Debo has an actual leg up in negotiations than Kyler does. And it's hard to compare it past that point.
Yeah. And, it's a different position with Debo, receiver. So it's a whole different thing. I think with the deal with Debo, though, like he really last year really kind of broke out. I mean, he was good, but last year really broke out.
Yeah, 1,400 yards.
Yeah, and I think part of his concern is the way they've used him in the taking carries out of the backfield. I think with Debo's situation, he is really pressing for an extension early because I think he's concerned that with the usage, he has a higher risk of injury.
Oh, easily.
And so I think he's really wanting to get that extension early. So. And so, yeah, but it's all a matter of leverage. How much leverage does he have? And I don't know if Debo has as much leverage as a quarterback, so, but we'll see what happens with that. Let's see. I want to just make sure there's a few comments. He's Raphael saying quarterback market may not work that way, but if logic is we want to win Super Bowl, why does the money amount matter? How many, Tom Brady is a rare exception. No one else, he's been willing to be underpaid, and that's to his
yes.
credit.
You took exactly my point. That contract is a statistical outlier in Brady's career, because all Brady ever did was extensions that pushed the money down the road, or he took a pay cut, so that way they could get all the pieces that they had. I mean, he was throwing to freaking like Major League Lacrosse players, and the defense was star-studded or better, whatever, effective enough to win a title.
And listen, my position has always been pro player. I support players getting as much money as they can, because the collective bargaining favors the owners. And I'm never going to tell a player you need to take less or you're doing something wrong. If a player is willing to, of their own volition, take less, I appreciate it. And Tom Brady at points did that. That's great for him. But I am not going to say that I think I'm never going to say that I think an organization needs to expect that of a player, because most players won't do that. You can say, well, that's one of the reasons he won his rings, because, okay, maybe, but he's like the only player who's done that good. So other players aren't going to do that, whether you like it or agree with it or not. But at the same time, I would still come back to that point that if you sign Kyler now, 3 years into his contract, it's going to be a bargain contract. That's because Matthew Stafford had a $27 million contract. I know I said that earlier tonight when they won with the Rams, right? And now, but at the same time, the Rams extended him for market value. So the Rams were willing to pay him too, right? So you whether you like it or not, you got to do it. And maybe the first couple of years are tough, but down the road, when the salary cap gets bigger, you're going to be in everyone has talked about rookie contracts so much, how they're an advantage, build around, go chips all in while you're on the rookie deal. And that's true. But I think people until recently have missed the point that the back end of a veteran contract is also a window where you've got a quarterback on a discount. It's not as much of a discount as a rookie deal, but it's still it's also a good window, right? So, and I think people have started to realize that more with the Matthew Stafford thing. I think the fact that the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford on the back end of a big contract, that was a big contract at the time, and were able to make that work. I think people now are starting to see that they're recognizing that that's another window in addition to the rookie deals. So
I agree.
We've got a question. When was the last time there was this amount of commotion with this Cardinals team?
2009 and 2018.
There you go. Grandizer's mentioning I mentioning some different players. Maybe these are some players, interesting players. Let's see. I just saw Cole Turner, tight end out of Nevada, who I like. And I think I've said this before. I think he reminds me of Dan Arnold. In terms of the way he plays.
I love Dan Arnold.
Well, look at Cole Turner. If you haven't looked at his highlights, he's built like Dan Arnold and plays like him. So yeah. So any other thoughts? We're getting close to an hour. I mean, Kyler and AJ Green have given us a lot. Look, this is a good question. It's a little bit different direction. What are y'all projections for D-Hop this year? And I think maybe we'll probably we'll probably wrap up on that, because we've gone, it's flown, but there's a lot of,
Yeah. I'm going to go back to what he hit in 2020 with us. Like at least 1,100 yards, and I want to see double-digit touchdowns. He's got to have 10 to 13 touchdowns. There's no excuses for Kyler to not throw the ball to him and at least feature him. I know not every game is going to be like that, but there's got to be 1, 2, maybe even 3 big games where he just takes over like he did in Houston to actually show that, okay, Hopkins isn't broken off of the injuries that he sustained, and he can still be the player that he was when we traded for him.
Yeah. I think like last year, the beginning of the season, the offense was spreading the ball out more than they did in the past. And I did a video that early in the season that talked about that the target share for DeAndre Hopkins had gone down, but the offense was more effective because they were spreading it out. So I do think they're going to spread it out more than they did the first year he was here. Because the first year they were here, you remember this, like the Cardinals offense in the first year with DeAndre Hopkins was throw, curl routes to DeAndre Hopkins, throw screens to Larry Fitzgerald, and run the ball. And
154 targets.
Right. And he got a crazy amount of targets, and then if none of that worked, Kyler ran the ball. Right. And that they were, they were middle of the road as an offense. But like last year in that first stretch before Hopkins got injured, they were so much more effective, and Kyler was spreading the ball out. Hopkins wasn't getting as many targets, but he was still part of the offense. I think he's going to have a below average target number in terms of his career, but over his career, he's been a target monster. Yeah. So I think if he's healthy, hopefully what we're going to see out of Hopkins is something like 90 receptions, where normally you'd expect 110, so 90 receptions, 1,100 yards, and hopefully like 8 touchdowns. I do think they'll spread the ball out more, like they did earlier last year. So that's
Larry
kind of what I'm thinking.
Fitzgerald numbers right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But but those numbers go with an offense that's really humming, and you have Ertz, a big part of it, hopefully Rondale Moore, and maybe even a rookie that they bring in. So yeah. Whew. Well, it's been an hour, and any final thoughts, Aaron, that you want to kind of share, and also let folks know where to follow you?
Yeah. So my Twitter is @_ABB Sports. It is my all Cardinals Twitter separated from the professional one. So unless you are really into strength and conditioning, this one right here, that's the one you want to follow. And I tweet, and I'm working on getting that more and more active. Of course, just trying to stay up on the professional side too. And then the other thing is just, as I've said multiple times before, just be ready to expect the unexpected with Steve Kine. And I tell myself every year I'm going to try to be even, and I'm going to, see what, I'm going to respond to the draft pick instead of react. But I if I had to give a number of if it's going to be, like a Zaven Collins this year, I highly doubt that that it will be there. So just be ready for it. Have it in the back of your mind. Whatever you guys do for the draft, obviously have fun. Just be safe. If you're going to go down, I think they're having a watch party. Basically, if you are going to party, just don't be stupid. Get a ride, get an Uber, whatever, and just make sure you guys go and like Joseph's video, subscribe, get in that Discord, and just share it with your friends, because I really think that you guys bring you commenters, you guys bring a hell of a discussion, and this is what the Cardinals community is all about, is you guys. So that's who we do it for. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, I want to mirror that. Thank you for saying that, Aaron. Yeah, if you aren't part of the Discord, there's a link below. Join it. There's over 100 folks in there. Aaron's in there. We got him in there. And there's a lot of good conversation over the course of the week. A lot of the folks that are in the chat here are part of the Discord. And we get into it sometimes in there. Yeah, and underscore taking time out for drinking. Oh, don't. Yeah.
Let's.
Yeah, but yeah. Thank you all for being here. Oh, he's asking, is that a Deion Buchanan jersey?
No, I think it was Lance was asking about it, but it's a personalized jersey.
Ooh.
And so I got married in October, and you probably all think it's cheesy as hell, but both my wife and I got customized jerseys. I got 20, she got 21. It was October of 2021. And nice. During the dinner, I announced her as my draft pick for life. So I got pictures. If you want to see them on the next podcast, I'll get them.
I think you should share them. Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Do that.
Well, yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, please make sure you subscribe if you aren't already. Jump into the Discord. Follow Aaron on Twitter. My Twitter info is below.
Don't forget Raising Zona too.
Yes, and he's I think I've got a link in there to his articles on Raising Zona. Make sure you read his work. And keep an eye out because I'm going to be doing something for the first round of the draft, probably a live stream kind of watch party. So more details will be coming as I get that set up. So, and one last note, we won't have a Thursday night stream next week. I've got a conference. So, but yeah, I'm going to do sort of a watch party live stream. I'm still figuring out what the details are going to be, but for the first round that night, I'm going to be live streaming, kind of, responding to what's going on. So, keep an eye out for details on that. We'll have a mock draft Monday, this upcoming Monday, but no TCR live next Thursday. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to, before we head out, I'm going to put up the member shout outs to thank everyone who are channel members, and then we'll call it a night. So, all right, everyone, peace.
See you guys.